The Americans with Disabilities Act, commonly referred to as ADA, went into effect in 1991 and updated in 2010 and harmonized with model building codes. The Department of Justice, commonly referred to as DOJ, has the jurisdiction to enforce the rules and regulations of the ADA. The DOJ will perform an audit and inspect the facility after they receive complaints of potential violations. Often, the complaints are not legitimate, or at least the people who made the complaints were not aware of the details of the ADA requirements, but this ends up resulting in legal fees and unfavorable perception for the affected companies or operators. EFI Global continues to work with companies to proactively evaluate and inspect commercial properties or businesses through a multi-tiered approach in order to identify deficiencies or address violations issued by the DOJ and provide recommendations to address or correct the questionable situations. An example of a major violation included a cruise line that was issued a penalty of $55,000. As part of the case, the cruise line was required to escrow an additional $350,000 for potential liability payments to those people affected by those deficiencies. There's also been cases where the DOJ has issued a violation to a single facility, inspected the facility, then expanded their case to other facilities occupied or operated by the same property owner or operator. Corrections of these conditions should be addressed from a liability standpoint, but are not necessarily considered code violations. The ADA accessibility guidelines concern civil rights issues as they pertain to the disabled and are not construction codes, although many local jurisdictions have adopted the guidelines as such. Key federal accessibility legislation leading up to the ADA has included the Architectural Barriers Act of 1968 and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act in 1973. The Architectural Barriers Act had included federal courthouses, post offices, VA hospitals, federal administration buildings, and other federally operated facilities, in addition to including schools, colleges, university, and university housing. The Fair Housing Amendments Act, commonly referred to as FHA, covers the multifamily residential buildings. FHA expanded coverage, including persons with disabilities, triggering architects to design accessible multifamily residential buildings. FHA is enforced by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, as well as Department of Justice and federal and local courts. FHA specifically applies to multifamily residential buildings first occupied on or after March 13, 1991. The ADA requires entities providing goods and services to the public to take certain steps to improve access to existing places of business. This mandate includes the obligation to remove barriers from existing buildings when it's readily achievable to do so. It's important to note the definition of readily achievable, in this case where it means easily accomplishable and able to be carried out without much difficulty or expense. As you can see from the key examples provided, DOJ investigations can lead to civil penalties and corrective actions that must be addressed. Through a multi-tiered approach, EFI Global can advise you on proactive, readily achievable measures that can be taken to mitigate your concerns. The Americans with Disabilities Act, commonly referred to as ADA,